The first project I'm going to be making is a tool tray for the X-Carve to hold my clamps, bits, and other tools. I screwed the tray to the sideboard so that it can't fall and I don't have to worry about my bits getting damaged or broken. Let's see how I make it. To start, I cut a piece of 3/4-inch plywood on the table saw off camera. Then I clamped it to the wasteboard of the X-Carve. I like to keep a 5/32 hex bit and an impact driver near the X-Carve to tighten the clamps. Then I homed the CNC to the bottom left corner of the workpiece. Using a 90-degree 1/4-inch V-bit, I will cut a bunch of indents into the piece. Later, I will drill these out to hold my clamp screws and router bits. Then I changed the bit to a 1/4-inch compression bit and cut the pockets for all the clamps, bits, and tools to sit in. Once everything was cut, I could move the gantry out of the way and test fit everything while it was still clamped. The micrometer doesn't fit, the collet wrench doesn't fit, the clamp arms don't fit, the risers don't fit, and of course the clamp bases don't fit. Even though nothing fit, it was pretty easy to fix. All I had to do was extend the pocket for the micrometer and offset the rest of the pockets a 1/16 of an inch. I then cleaned up the pockets with 120 grit sandpaper. I had to do this because I only cut 1/16 of an inch deep with the compression bit and only the upcut part of the bit was cutting. Then I can head over to the drill press to drill the holes for the clamp screws. I forgot to hit record for me drilling the holes for the bits, but it was basically the same thing but with a different size bit. Once the tray was done, I marked the holes on the underside of it using a nail set. Then I could drill out the holes on the drill press and countersink them using a larger bit. Then I screwed in the tray to the sideboard and I could load in my clamps, bits, and other tools. And the tool tray is done. The second project I'm going to be making is a 0-0 stop so I can butt my workpiece up against it and the bit will already be homed in the X and Y axes. I started by cutting a piece of 1/4-inch plywood to size on the table saw. Then I grabbed some clamps from my newly made tool tray and I could clamp the piece to the table. Then I homed the CNC and I could get to cutting out the profile with a 1/4-inch compression bit. Once that was done, I changed the bit to a 90-degree 1/4-inch V-bit to cut some indents that will later be drilled out. Then I re-homed the CNC and cut out those indents. Once the CNC was done, I cleared the gantry out of the way and unclamped the part from the wasteboard. I cut the tabs on the bandsaw and sanded them flush on the belt sander. I drilled the indents on the stop out and screwed it to the table using the green clamp screws. I homed the CNC to make sure the stop would be inside the cutting parameters of the machine. I moved the spindle to where I thought 0-0 should be, and I moved the stops for the limit switches up to the limit switches, so this would be my new home position. When the X-Carve homes, it hits the limit switches and then it backs off a little bit. So in this shot you just see me doing some fine-tuning to find that perfect balance of where it would hit the limit switches, back off, and still be at the origin. In this shot, you see me backing off the CNC a couple inches along the X-axis and Y-axis to get it out of home. And then I re-homed the machine to make sure that it would be where 0-0 should be relative to the stop. When I homed the spindle, I homed it a little to the left and a little forward, so that way I could come back and trim the stop so it would be square to the machine. And the 0-0 stop is done. The third project I'm going to be making are some dust blockers to keep dust and chips off of the Y rails and V wheels of the X-Carve. The piece of extruded aluminum that holds the drag chain sits really low, so I have to machine some brackets to raise that up and push it back so it would not interfere with the X-axis motor. I started by clamping some 1/8 inch aluminum to the X-Carve spoil board. Then I honed my 90-degree 1/4 inch aluminum V-bit. This bracket has to get bent, so I cut in a line and a couple holes to get drilled out. I swapped the bit over to an 1/8 inch O-flute end mill to cut out the profile. I rehomed the bit, and then I cut it out. I cleared the gantry, unclamped the piece, and brought it over to the vise to clean it up with a file. Then I drilled out the holes over at the drill press. I removed the burr with a file and I could get to bending this piece. This was my first time ever bending aluminum and it went pretty well. I just lined up the line I cut on the X-Carve with the vise jaw and I just bent it. Then I could clamp up some 1/4 inch aluminum to start making the other two brackets. Then I homed the machine and I started my pocketing tool paths with an 1/8 inch O-flute end mill. Then I could change my bit over to the 90-degree 1/4 inch aluminum V-bit and cut the indents that will later be drilled out. Then I changed the bit back to the 1/8 inch O-flute end mill and cut out the profile of the part. Then I cleared the gantry, unclamped the part, and cleaned it up with a file. Then I drilled out the holes over at the drill press and I could get to installing these brackets. I made a second one of those brackets that you just saw me make off camera. I need two, one for either side to support the drag chain. The installation was pretty easy. All I had to do was replace the brackets that were on the X-Carve with the brackets that I just made. My camera stopped recording for some reason, so here are some shots of the brackets installed on the X-Carve. Now that the brackets were done, I could get to actually installing the dust blockers, and I started doing this by blowing off the Y rails with an air compressor. I cut some plexiglass off camera on the table saw and stuck some double-sided tape to the Y rails to attach the plexiglass to them. Double-sided tape is nice because it holds the plexiglass on really tight, but it's not permanent, so I can always take the plexiglass off if I have to. Then I peeled the other side of the double-sided tape, and I could stick the plexiglass dust blocker to the Y rail. It was the same thing for the other side, and the dust blockers were done.